Hello dear students, you are welcome in this video. Dear students, today we are going to talk about Magadhi Prakrit as a classical language. In the previous video, we talked about Pali as a classical language, as we are making a series in Indian Knowledge System or IKS. So this is the next video in the classical languages, and today we will discuss about Magadhi Prakrit as a classical language with its historical significance and how this language has influenced the other Indian languages in the course of the time. So here Magadhi Prakrit as a classical language, and first we'll think about the very initial stage of the Magadhi Prakrit and why Magadhi Prakrit is important language. So Magadhi Prakrit was a middle Indo-Aryan language. So first thing that we need to understand is Magadhi Prakrit, or it is simply called as Magadhi instead of Magadhi Prakrit. Most of the time we call it as Magadhi language. So Magadhi is a middle Indo-Aryan language, and it is spoken in Magadha region, as its name suggests, or the very nomenclature Magadhi is related to the empire of Magadha or the kingdom of Magadha. So this Magadha kingdom is directly connected to the parts of Bihar and eastern UP today. So if we think about this Magadha kingdom, here you can see this is the Magadha kingdom, which is directly connected in the two states of modern India. One is Bihar and the other is eastern Uttar Pradesh. So this area is called as Magadha. Now it flourished around 6th century before Christ, or before Common Era. So 6th century is the origin, or we can say that it is used in the 6th century, or the use of Magadhi started from the 6th century before Common Era, means BC. So it is an middle Indo-Aryan linguistic family. So the family of Magadhi is Indo-Aryan. Then it is spoken in ancient Magadha, or geographical origin, if we want to stress. So this is the geographical origin of Magadhi, and the period is 6th century before Christ. Next, here we have historical significance of the Magadhi, and we find that it is evolved from the Vedic Sanskrit. So many of the languages in India is called from the uh, Sanskrit. So Sanskrit is the fundamental language from where we find different types of languages originated. So there are some thinkers which consider that the Sanskrit is the oldest language in India, and from this language we have many language emerged. So prominent during 6th century before Christ, as we seen it, and it is this is very important. It is the language of Buddha, or Gautam Buddha has used Magadhi as his language. So Buddha's time and the Mauryan Empire. So we need to consider, or we need to think about that it is also used in Mauryan Empire. So Mauryan Empire was one of the largest empires in the then India, when we think about. So it has occupied so many parts of the Asian continent, or we can say that the South Asian continent. So its origin is Vedic Sanskrit. So Buddha himself used this Magadhi, spoken during the time of Gautam Buddha, including Gautam Buddha. And in Mauryan Empire, we find that it is the official language. So many orders and the communications were in Magadhi in Mauryan Empire. As also we find that the same is the case with Ashokan Empire. So Ashoka also used Magadhi as his language. Then we have here the role of Magadhi in uh, religion and culture. So it is the language of Buddhism and Jainism. These two religions are very important religions in India, and we find that Buddhism and Jainism used Magadhi. Most of the time it was the language, liturgical language in the Buddhist canon and Jain canon. So early Jain Agamas were composed in Magadhi, and language spoken by Buddha himself. So again, we find that the Ashokan edicts, edicts means orders or communications at the time. So these orders or edicts were composed in Magadhi. So spread Buddhist philosophy during the reign of Ashoka, or in the era of Ashoka. So this is the role in religion and culture. So why Magadhi is important in Indian culture? because it has spread these two prominent religions all over in India, Buddhism and Jainism. And also the Mauryan kings and the Ashoka used Magadhi as their language of court, language of communication, and many orders were drew or drawn in Magadhi language, and still we find some of the Ashokan edicts in Magadhi. So this is the importance. Then we find that there are linguistic features of Magadhi. Magadhi is a very, we can say that a different language than the other languages based on its linguistic features. And here we find that simplified phonology and grammar compared to Sanskrit. So Sanskrit is considered more complex than Magadhi. Magadhi is simplified, vocabulary mixed with local and Sanskrit elements. So when we think about Magadhi, we find that the local people or the masses in those periods, Mauryan period or Ashokan period, used Magadhi as the language of communication, and hence it is a simplified language in terms of phonology and in terms of grammar. So here we have an example of sound change of r. So Rajan, here we find that king, and it is changed as l sound here, Lajan. Then we have sibilants, yes. So desa means country. So here s sound, and desa again here we find the s sound. Then nominative case it is masculine, and a also is masculine. So this is the features of Magadhi, the brief features, linguistic features of Magadhi, and hence it is a different language. Then we have literary contributions. As we know that the language is used in Buddha scriptures, hence it has great literary contribution. So Pali Canon's Tripitaka, most of the Tripitakas were used in Magadhi. So Pali and Magadhi are similar languages. There are a great similarity between Pali and Magadhi Prakrit, and hence we find that these Tripitaka were composed in Pali as well as in Magadhi also. Linguistic roots in Magadhi region, core Buddhist scriptures were composed in Magadhi language. Then again we have Jataka tales in Magadhi, initially oral in Magadhi. Now, when it was composed before that, most of the Jataka kathas were, or Jataka tales were in oral tradition. So, when it were in oral tradition, at that time the Magadhi is used, and Magadhi was the medium of communication of these Jataka tales. Stories of Buddha's past lives also we find in Magadhi language. So, this is a prominent language. We can say that it's a classical language. Again, we have in Jain, these literary contributions of Magadhi. For example, Agamas were composed. Agamas means nothing but the lives of Tirthankaras and some of the philosophy. So, Agamas were composed in Magadhi. Philosophical foundations and ethical principles we find in Agamas. So, Agamas are a very important texts of Jain, and it were composed in Magadhi language. Then we have Kalpa Sutra. Kalpa Sutras are nothing but lives of Tirthankaras, including Mahavira's life also were composed in the Magadhi language. So this is the importance of Magadhi in Jainism or in Jain religion and Buddha or Buddhism. So if we think about its influence, we find that its influence and legacy is a vast. For example, modern descendants of Magadhi are the Bengali, Odia, Maithili, and Assamese. So these languages have great influence of Magadhi. When we study these languages, we find that the influence is very evident, and in some way we can say that Magadhi is the progeny of all these languages. So cultural heritage made philosophy accessible to masses. So this is the heritage and importance of Magadhi, because it traveled to the philosophy, and the ancient knowledge traveled through Magadhi to the common people. Also, historical records, we find that insights into ancient India. If you want to study ancient India or the Mauryan Empire, Ashokan Empire, or the Magadha kingdom, we must know Magadhi, or at least now we find that the translations are available of all these texts. So we should study translations and the Magadhi language to understand the ancient Indian, basically, or very particularly, if you want to understand the Mauryan empire, or the Ashokan empire, or the Magadha kingdom. So this is the significance of Magadhi language and its influence on other languages. So I hope you got the idea of this Magadhi language, and what we did study in this video. We can make a summary. So enduring impact, what is the enduring impact? Magadhi Prakrit profoundly impacted Indian philosophy, language, and spirituality. So its echoes resonate in Eastern Indian languages and traditions today. For example, we find Bengali, Maithili, Odia, Assamese. These languages have greater influence. So it has philosophical depth. It shaped religious thought. We find a linguistic revolution through the Magadhi, then foundation for modern languages, spiritual heritage, and voice of ancient wisdom. So all these things we discussed in this video. I hope you got the idea. If you have any problem, any query, you can comment below in the comment section. We will try to understand or solve your queries. Let's meet in the next video. Thank you very much.